Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep, and I mean really deep, inside our own cells. We're going to unpack the process that powers pretty much all life on Earth, cellular respiration. It's the microscopic engine that turns the food you eat into every single thought, movement, and heartbeat. So, let's get into it.
You know, it's such a basic question, right? We all know we have to eat, we have to breathe. It's just what we do to live. But what is actually happening? Why is that bite of an apple and that breath of fresh air so incredibly critical? The answer is this beautiful, intricate engine working away inside you right this second. All right, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to follow the energy. We'll start with the fuel our cells actually use, then we'll literally crack open a sugar molecule. After that, we'll venture inside the cell's powerhouse to see the main event, the tiny turbine that creates all the energy. Then we'll look at how scientists can even measure this invisible process. And finally, we'll zoom out to see how it connects every single living thing on the planet.
Okay, first things first. Your body can't just run on sugar, glucose, directly. Think about it like this. Glucose is like a $100 bill. Yeah, it's worth a lot, but you can't just stick it in a vending machine to get a snack. You need to break it down into smaller, usable change.
And that pocket change for your cells is this molecule right here, ATP. Adenosine triphosphate. Just think of it as the universal, rechargeable battery for your cells. Honestly, the entire complex point of cellular respiration, the whole shebang, is to charge up as many of these little ATP batteries as possible.
So how do we start charging those batteries? Well, our journey kicks off in the cytoplasm, which is kind of the main fluid-filled space of the cell, just outside the real power plant. This is the prep stage, getting everything ready for the energy bonanza that's about to happen. This first step is called glycolysis. The name literally means sugar splitting, and it's so fundamental that it happens in nearly all living things and doesn't even need oxygen. That tells you it probably evolved super early in the history of life, way before our atmosphere had much oxygen at all. All it does is take one big glucose molecule and snap it in half.
The process itself is beautifully simple. You put in a little bit of energy to split that one glucose molecule into two smaller molecules, which we call pyruvic acid. Now this gives us a small, immediate payout of ATP. Think of it like an appetizer. But the real prize, the massive amount of energy, is still locked away inside those two smaller molecules.
All right, now that our sugar is split into pyruvic acid, we're ready to head into a very special part of the cell. This is where the real show begins, where the serious energy production happens. And it's the reason that oxygen you're breathing in right now is absolutely 100% essential.
We are now inside the mitochondrion, the one and only powerhouse of the cell. And from this point on, the whole process becomes aerobic. All that means is that oxygen is now required to get the job done.
Once we're inside, that pyruvic acid enters a process called the Krebs cycle. You can picture it as a molecular disassembly line. It just systematically breaks down the rest of the sugar molecule piece by piece. As it does, it releases carbon atoms which become the CO2 you exhale, and, most importantly, it harvests all the high-energy electrons.
So how do those super valuable high-energy electrons get where they need to go? Well, they get picked up by these specialized molecules, NADH and FADH2, that act like tiny little taxis. Their only job is to grab these electrons and shuttle them over to the final and most critical stage of this whole process. Okay, everything up to this point has just been the setup. We split the sugar, we've loaded up our electron taxis, and now they're all headed to one spot for the grand finale. This is it. This is where the vast majority of our cellular energy is actually made.
Just how important is this final step? I mean, this quote from LibreTexts really puts it into perspective. Chemiosmosis generates 90% of the ATP. If the first couple of steps were about making pocket change, this is where we break into the main energy vault.
This all goes down in what's called the electron transport chain. The taxis drop off their high-energy electrons. And as those electrons get passed down a line of proteins, kind of like a bucket brigade, their energy is used to pump protons all to one side of a membrane. This builds up this immense pressure, almost like water building up behind a dam. And at the very end of the line, oxygen sweeps in to grab those used-up low-energy electrons. This is the exact reason you need to breathe, to clear the assembly line so more electrons can flow.
So what about that dam of protons we just built up? Well, all that pent-up pressure gets released as the protons rush back through one single channel. And that channel is an incredible molecular machine called ATP synthase. As the protons flow through it, they physically spin part of the machine, just like water spinning a massive turbine in a dam.
And that spinning motion? That's the power source. It provides just enough energy to smack a phosphate back onto a molecule of ADP, recharging it into a high-energy ATP battery. And we're not talking one or two. This tiny turbine churns out around 34 ATP molecules from that single glucose we started with. It is an unbelievably efficient little generator.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This is all happening at an invisible molecular level. So how in the world can scientists actually measure it? Well, it turns out you can track the whole process by measuring the gases it uses and produces, with a surprisingly clever device called a respirometer.
The basic idea here is pretty simple. You take a living organism, say, some germinating seeds, and you put them inside a sealed chamber. As the seeds respire, they're going to consume oxygen from the air in there. So, we can measure how fast they're respiring just by tracking how fast the volume of gas inside the chamber goes down.
And this isn't just some abstract diagram, it's a real experiment that people build all the time. On the left, you see the simple materials, often just some syringes and washers, and on the right, you can see them all put together, ready to measure the respiration rate of seeds or even small bugs. It's a really hands-on way to watch this invisible process happen. But there's a really clever trick to make this work. See, as the seeds consume oxygen, they also produce carbon dioxide. So the gas pressure shouldn't really change at all, right? The secret ingredient is a little bit of potassium hydroxide, or KOH, that you place inside. It's a chemical that absorbs all the CO2 the seeds produce. And that isolates the one thing we actually want to see, the drop in pressure caused by the oxygen being used up. It's a really elegant little solution. So we started this whole thing with the simple question of why we eat and breathe, and we journeyed all the way down to the molecular level. For our final step, let's zoom all the way back out and see how this tiny, tiny cellular process fits into the grand scheme of life on this planet. On this slide, you're looking at arguably the two most important equations in all of biology. On top, you've got cellular respiration. That's what we animals do. We take sugar and oxygen, and we release carbon dioxide, water, and of course, energy. On the bottom is photosynthesis. That's what plants do. They take in carbon dioxide, water, and light energy, and produce the exact sugar and oxygen that we need to survive.
You see it, right? They are perfect mirror images of each other. The waste products of one process are the essential fuel for the other. It's this beautiful planetary scale cycle of giving and taking that drives the flow of energy through pretty much every ecosystem on Earth. So I'll leave you with this final thought. We've seen the incredible, intricate machinery and the elegant cycles that power our every single moment. Everything you do, from listening to this right now to dreaming tonight, depends on it. So what would actually happen, even for a single second, if this tiny, essential turbine inside all of our cells just stopped?